Martin Lowery with the National Rural Electric Co-op Association. I'm going to follow Bill Cheney's lead just briefly and talk a little bit about our history. Our birth date, our official birth date is May 11th, 1935, which was the creation of the Rural Electrification Administration. And that creation was actually an executive order by President Franklin Roosevelt. But actually, if you trace it back, his cousin, Theodore Roosevelt, as president, had a lot to do with it, quite before there was a first electric cooperative. And that had to do with a viewpoint, a kind of a populist viewpoint about how to deliver a lot of services in this country. And he asked Gifford Pinchot, who later became governor of Pennsylvania, to head up a commission on country life to figure out how to improve life in farm and ranch communities around the country. And Pinchot came back with his report, gave it to the president, and the president submitted it to Congress, I believe in 1908, with a cover letter. And that cover letter said, I offer you these recommendations for the improvement of life in rural America, and I strongly encourage you to consider implementing these recommendations through the cooperative model. Because, in my opinion, as Theodore Roosevelt, President of the United States, the cooperative model is the better model wherever human beings are willing to take direct responsibility for their own actions and initiatives. And it didn't happen until 35, but from that point forward, there were discussions consistently at the state level and at the federal level around the question of how you avoided private power companies from keeping a kind of stranglehold on the expansion of electric service, with a clear understanding that electric service was fundamental to quality of life and economic growth. So if you fast forward then to where we are today, it's quite an amazing story, and many people will refer to it as the greatest engineering feat in the 20th century, where you had this public-private partnership between USDA, rural electrification, and the co-ops. It actually was the case that the co-op model was not initially considered as the right way to bring electrification to rural America. The REA, the Rural Electrification Administration, was willing to give low-interest loans to the investor-owned utilities. They wouldn't take them. They wouldn't take them in part because what had happened in this historical period was in 1933, you had the creation of the Tennessee Valley Authority, which was public power. And then in 1935, you had the creation of the Public Utility Holding Company Act, which was an attempt to stop the major movement of holding companies as the way to run utilities without any accountability for the flow of money and without any accountability in terms of rate regulation. So the federal government basically gave up since the utilities weren't going to play ball and said, how are we going to do this? And the answer was, let's look at the co-op model. I'll bet you if we talk to farmers and ranchers around the country and they're willing to put up their $5, we can get something going in terms of self-help and self-responsibility. So today we have, in round numbers, 900 electric cooperatives serving in 47 states, 81% of the counties in the country, 73% of the geographic area, from Hawaii to Florida, from Alaska to Maine, and it's been a huge success story. There are approximately 75,000 employees, 17 to 18 million meters, and then behind those meters, 42 million Americans. So it's quite interesting, and I'm really proud to have been associated with it for the many years I have been. The questions, though, that I've been asked to start with here in terms of is the cooperative model different are, does it make a difference in terms of board decisions? Does it make a difference in terms of delivery of service? And does it make a difference within the electric industry on how technology is implemented to the benefit of consumers? On the board side, I've visited many of our boards over the years, and that's a no-brainer, because it's absolutely clear when you're watching the operation in that boardroom that 100% of the focus, as has been discussed already, is on what's right for the member. How do we do what's right for the member? But I can give you a specific example that's a clear differentiation that's happened within the past couple of years between investor-owned utilities and electric cooperatives, and that's around energy efficiency and conservation. Electric cooperatives are going to look at this as the right thing to do in terms of making sure people can pay their electric bills, get the highest quality of service possible without ending up in an unaffordable situation, and how can we help in terms of becoming more efficient both with the system and more efficient in terms of how people use electricity. Investor-owned utilities, not all, but many, saw that as an opportunity to make money. And the way that comes about is you go to the commission and you say, we will put together an energy efficiency program as long as we can get a rate of return on it in terms of the rate base that is equivalent to the avoided cost of power of the new power plant we would have had to build if we didn't do the efficiency program. Electric cooperatives do not look at the world that way. They look at it as a cost-based service. How do we recover our costs and still do the right thing for consumers? Many, many commissions have been faced with investor-owned utilities coming forward saying, what's the deal? How can I rate base this and make sure I stay whole, simply because my issue is the return to my stockholders, not my stakeholders. So I see a clear difference there, and the boards of directors of electric cooperatives are consistently like-minded in terms of saying what's going to work for our member consumers. On the service delivery, I am proud to announce that many of our members subscribe to the American Customer Satisfaction Index, which is done by the University of Michigan, and we've been involved in it for a number of years now. This quarter, for the first time, they have shown the results for electric cooperatives separate from municipal utilities and separate from investor-owned utilities. And cooperatives come out #1 within the utility industry by a wide margin. And it's very exciting because that's now, you can get onto the ACSI website, and there it is, this little rotating box there with cooperatives on top, by a significant margin. So our members are doing something quite right when it comes to service. Specifically, where service matters to all of us is outages and outage management. And it's fascinating to watch how our members work really hard and quickly, not only to get the lights back on, but also to communicate very clearly what the status of things is. Some of you are from the Washington area. I live in Maryland, and we went through a Pepco outage earlier this year. I was out 13 hours. Some of Bethesda and Chevy Chase were out like 4 days. For the 13 hours that I was out, there wasn't a single thing that changed on the website of Pepco in terms of a notification as to when that outage was going to get better or going to be improved. And right next to their non-changing statement that we are looking into this was an icon that said, click here to see more about our smart grid technology program, which I thought was kind of ironic. The other piece of outages is the crisis outage, when you really do have a lengthy one, you've been hit by a storm. And sad to say, our members have suffered greatly in Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. And not only that, but we've had Arkansas, Missouri. It's been a tough year. But specifically in Alabama, our national director was up this weekend for a meeting, and his area of Alabama was hit very, very hard. His house was spared, but actually a tornado bounced almost literally over it, devastating the community. And what he said was, it was great to see those trucks roll in from all over the country. Co-op trucks coming in to take care of the outage, and that's consistently where we are at our absolute best. And on the role of the member consumer in terms of getting the best out of technology, that could be a long conversation, but I'll tell you, on the whole area of putting smart meters in and trying to make the system more real-time, useful, and getting better service, cooperatives are doing extraordinarily better than investor-owned companies and municipals, really thinking it through, really making a difference. And I'll stop there and look forward to the further dialogue.